Welcome to another episode of Bringing Down the Grindhouse, a podcast where we discuss horror in media. And today, we've got a special episode for you folks. We're doing a sort of non-horror episode, though it does have some horror elements, and we will be discussing Summer Wars. I'm Mitch.
I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Justine.
So today we actually have a special guest co-host, and we have Justine with us today.
Hi.
And we actually, Justine and I just finished watching the Summer Wars, and we decided we wanted to do a non-horror episode for this one because we hadn't done one in a while. I think the last one was The Fifth Element.
Yeah, it was our sci-fi one, and then the one before that was our Chasing Amy and When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, that was the other ones.
Yeah.
Mitch, you're the one who actually introduced me to this film. How did you first hear about this one?
So I am part of a club over at Miracosta for a little bit, and we would do movie nights sometimes, and one of the movies that was brought to us by a member of the club was Summer Wars. Ooh. I'd never heard it before. I was like, what the fuck is this? And he said, it's an animu. And I was like,
animu.
Oh, all right. I was like, okay, man, that sounds cool. And then we watched it, and I was blown away.
Right. No, it's really good. It's an animated film or an anime, and it's definitely a really well-made one. I felt like what you had mentioned earlier, kind of off the microphone, was that it's like Miyazaki level quality.
Yes.
And is very good.
Agreed. It has sort of the kind of mystical element that Miyazaki brings, you know. Like, in a sense, we're kind of dealing with a mystical creature, this AI business.
Right. And so the main portion of the film focuses on this virtual sort of, I don't know what to call it. It's like a utility kind of program.
It's like a virtual world that it's sort of like it's definitely a metaphor for social media. Yeah. In a way, and like it's like a virtual world everyone can log into from their cell phones, essentially. Yeah,
cell phones, computers. It looked like their DS.
Yeah,
at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Things like this, and it came out in 2009 too, so that's very relevant.
I was actually surprised by that, the way everything was portrayed. It seemed like it was made like maybe a year or two ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they were half guessing what some electronics would do, and then they were also showing the flip phones that existed during that current time. Yeah, but they definitely went really far into like what would social media mean. So it's interesting because I think in 2009 it wasn't like crazy big. Mm-hmm. It was just starting to get into like what are the real effects of a larger social media like platform like Facebook.
Yeah. I mean, it displays the risks as well as the benefits of having it there, and the movie opens up really well by introducing you to Oz, which is the name of this virtual world that they have,
which is a good reference.
The Land of Oz,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a straight reference to the Wizard of Oz, which is like I feel like other animes and or short films have used Oz as like a location, so it's like it wouldn't be the first time somebody used that naming. And there was a lot of like English and or like American titles for some of these things, and so it's interesting to see that dropped in.
Yeah, because it's going on a global scale, so because everyone hooks into Oz, and the movie even explains it. At least the narrator for Oz that explains what the program is and everything explains that. Oh, file your taxes through us. If you need to do business meetings, hook yourself up here.
It handles a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and it even like you find out later that even hospitals were using this and things like this, and everybody relied on it.
They hooked up. Go ahead.
Apparently, even the military relied on it.
Yep.
So that's the scary part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the way they put it was that the military kind of just let it loose and like didn't know what it was going to do.
Right. And
just used everyone's personal information as like a testing ground, which is not too far off from what happens with our current government. So it was like, oh, wow. And of course, it was the U.S. government in the film.
Yeah, of course.
It's always the U.S.
Yeah. But I mean, from what I saw, it handled business and finances, so you could have like your personal accounts on there. It could have like stock trading, I guess, and then you could have business meetings on there, as well as just being able to go onto it and talk to other people. But the main parts of it was that it was also connected to like their infrastructure. So if like any pipes that had the water or any alarms that could go off, especially in regards to the main characters, like the grandma was on like an alarm system because she had a weak heart, I guess.
Yeah.
They say exactly what disease it is that she had, and I guess because that system had gone offline, she wasn't able, or
the doctor wasn't notified.
He wasn't notified of that, and so that kind of it was a way to show what would happen on a much wider scale with just the family. But I mean, besides that though, I'm just really talking about like how big it was and how well connected, and it definitely has a huge impact whenever, if anything, happened to it.
And it really just shows the gravity that our technology holds in our lives.
Yeah. So how does it start? Like, where do we get? So we really get introduced to like one main family.
Well, we're start off by being introduced to Kenji.
Yeah.
Kenji Koiso and his buddy, whose name escapes me at the moment, but they're basically two teenagers, and they work for Oz. They're basically like there to like find bugs.
They're maintenance coders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He even mentions at some point that it's like it's not really a big deal. Like they have so many of us working for them, and so there's like it's fine. They have their own little avatars on there too, so they're able to like customize however they look. So there really is like a huge variety of avatars when you look at it. They didn't like recycle anything as far as I could see.
No, they had so many options, like make your avatar whatever you want. We have like a billion different options for you.
I do feel like it was kind of quick how the story started. You really didn't waste any time to get to the girl. I can't remember her name, but she
Natsuki.
She shows up and is like, I need somebody's help. I need to like hire somebody for a job, and doesn't explain anything about it. And then, of course, because they're both like, they're obsessed with her. Or they're like, have a crush on her. They're like, I'll do it. Like, I'll do it. Yeah. And so they both kind of argue over who's going to do it, him and his buddy. But eventually it is
Kenji.
It's Kenji. And he goes along with her. And you sort of find out like what's going on, but it's still confusing because he's kind of just carrying her bags over to where they're at.
And then he's brought to like this huge, like her huge family, and their huge estate that they have.
Yeah, their house is incredible.
Yeah,
first of all,
it's basically like your old style, like you'd expect like the Emperor of Japan to live there.
It's like literally a castle.
Yeah,
it's really cool, very traditional style home that they have, and it's all open from. I guess in most cases, all of the panels were removed from the outside part of the house, so you could just walk in and out of their house really easily. But she kind of surprises him because as soon as they get there, they meet the grandmother, who's like the main matriarch of the family.
And a badass.
Very
Side note.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Everybody respects her, and she became like the head of the household, and they were all cool with that. And so they go and meet, or Kenji goes and meets the grandma along with the girl that's brought him there, and she just surprises both of them by saying that he is her fiance.
Yeah,
which is so like
out of the blue.
I was not expecting that,
and he's just like,
yeah, sure.
I expected it.
Yeah. Really?
I don't know. It seems like something that would happen in that kind of situation. You know, the pretty girl shows up, invites the geeky dude out to the countryside to meet her family, and I don't know. I feel like it was kind of set up.
Like she had set it up herself on purpose with him, or like it was just
expected, just given the circumstances of the two of them.
Yeah, that's true. They did follow some of the tropes when you include two characters like that, especially in regards to like, oh, can you do this for me? And he's like, I'll do like anything.
Yeah,
literally anything, like fake being someone's fiance.
And he did. He went along with it.
Right, and then saving a lot of people from losing their lives, essentially.
That's true. Yeah, for like it just happened to be that he was one of the really smart kids who's going to be in the math Olympics, but he ended up not representing Japan, and it was like the first runner-up. Yeah. So he was disappointed from that, and he mentions that like closer to the beginning of the film. But it also gives you a good impression of, oh, this kid is really smart, and he knows how to code apparently, and be able to get past certain blocks and firewalls and things like that, which is important later for the film.
Yes. Very much so important.
But so we get introduced to Oz and like sort of what it is and how it's connected, but it sort of gets put to the side at first. It's sort of just like, here's this, you need to know this, but it'll be relevant later. And we start getting a better idea of just how well connected it is because of how people handle their lives basically on it. And they were definitely commenting on how our social media kind of exist with us today, where most people probably couldn't get by without that internet connection or with the connection to the social media. And so what did you guys make of that? Like, do you think they were predicting some things in 2009, or do you think it was an effect that was already happening?
Well, I think we were really headed in that direction anyways. I mean, ever since really the turn of the millennia, there's kind of been this fixation on the newest technology advancing everything, and things have become increasingly more advanced through the years. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of tech out there that we can't even fathom, you know.
speaking to Murr, who's a little bit younger than us as well, we've probably got close to about 10 years on him almost.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We've probably
He's
got
my age. So I don't have that many years.
Okay, well it's close to that much, but there's a year gap, and seeing how he views it. So I've discussed with him a few times about, Instagram and things like that, and he's like, that's how you can get work. That's how you can that's how you get connections with people, is using
true.
Instagram as a reason, as well as Facebook, as well as, I don't know about Twitter really so much, but I'm sure you
Twitter's
could.
pretty poppin' too.
Yeah, you can do that as well.
Twitter has definitely come up as one of the more important connections to have or to have a following on.
I mean, that's the president's main medium of communicating with us, apparently.
Yeah, but he's a jackass.
Someone take his Twitter away, please.
I'm surprised Twitter hasn't shut him down, to be honest.
Honestly. Well,
but I think it brings too much attention to them, so that they're like, we're not going to shut down the most profitable fucking account on here. So, yeah.
So once he's introduced to this family, introduced as the fiance and whatnot, he gets a message from his phone in the evening.
Yeah.
And it's this strange, stack of numbers. And he figures that it's some sort of code because he's a math nut. He loves it. So he instantly cracks the code after some time.
Yeah, I'm guessing just overnight, because it shows, the transition to the morning time.
Mm-hmm. He takes his time. He cracks it, and then this strange little, demon-looking creature jumps on, and he can't log into his avatar after this. And then it starts happening to a lot of people.
Yeah. They find out that there was a specific artificial intelligence that asked, I guess, 50 or so people to try to crack this code, and then used all of their answers, stole their accounts, and then broke into Oz, and then was starting to steal accounts that way.
And Kenji is framed for this at first.
Yeah.
So the media, the news media is blowing
they
up
found
over
him so
it.
quick.
Yeah,
Poor
they
kid.
put that really dorky censored picture of him where it's just his face with black over his eyes, and
There's
you
a
know
very
that it's
thin
him.
black bar over his eyes.
It's like, oh, I wonder who that is.
Yeah. And then that's when the family ends up finding out that he's not actually who she's saying that he is.
Right, yeah. They find out that she was in fact lying, and that this is not her fiance, but is just somebody that she brought. But she does explain why she asked him to do that, because she was fearful that her grandmother would die soon, and that she would never get to meet somebody that she was going to be married to, and so would prefer to just kind of fake it for her birthday, and then afterwards she's like, oh, we broke up later sometime.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the grandma does die, but it's sort of as a result of the artificial intelligence breaking into Oz, because one of the sons had a monitor on her, and it was not able to be notified because the Oz system was down.
Yep.
And so it's kind of you find out that it ended up being way more catastrophic for their family, and then possibly others, which they don't really focus on. But I think it's just because they didn't want to make them seem unimportant.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that all of the clips of all the fights that are in Oz and whatnot are super pretty looking. They really did a good job on the animation on this side, as well as outside of Oz too. Everything is really colorful. It's a really beautiful movie.
You have giant whale guardians.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that it was a whale guardian. I don't know why I like that so much, but it was just a blue and pink whale guardian.
I don't know. I feel like whales, it's hard to have a whale and be upset about a whale. They're just happy creatures, unless you're what is it, Captain Ahab?
Yeah, I was like...
By hell's heart, I stab at thee.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that reference. I wonder if maybe people think about that too sometimes, where they're like, is it pulled from this story? Is it pulled from something else? And I feel like this movie pulled from a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. Even the artificial intelligence looks like some sort of deity. And you couldn't quite place it into something, but it was definitely giving that illusion with the shining sun that shows up behind it.
It kind of reminded me of something like a Hindu god, in the pictures that I've seen of them.
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually,
yeah, it definitely has that. I think that's a good
the
placement
body
for
shape,
it.
the head shape, the mandala that was behind him once he started to level up in power.
Oh, that's the official term I was looking for.
Mandala?
Yeah. I couldn't think of what it was, but that's usually associated with how much power they have, right?
In a sense, yeah. But I guess it kind of made sense. They're trying to represent this AI as basically a god. It became god of the internet, which in a sense, the internet is so intertwined with our reality that he kind of became god of the world.
I think I think there's a quote in the movie as well. It was like, Kenny, did you break the internet?
I know. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
references like that.
He calls him and he's like, please tell me you didn't break the internet.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I knew it wasn't you. You're not like tough enough for that kind of stuff. And you're like, whoa, dude, his friend's
called
being
him a dweeb.
Yeah, his friend's being mean as hell, but he's still like helping him in some ways. Yeah. So it was pretty funny to see that.
He gives him this little avatar to go see what's going on.
It's a squirrel.
Basically. Yeah, it's this cute little squirrel, like little yellow squirrel, and it walks in there and then it calls out. It's just his avatar with a really like sinister smile on it. Mm-hmm. And then that's when they call in because they find out that one of the kids in the big family who's like 13 years old apparently is like the top fighter in like the fighting ring in Oz. Yeah.
Badass little bunny rabbit looking thing.
King Cosma is his name.
I wonder if that's a reference to anything. I did not look up Cosma.
It could be, but yeah, and King Cosma is basically just this like super jacked rabbit.
I mean, he's
pretty. Yeah, you are.
But he's very fast.
He's fast and quick. He knows. Yeah.
It was that he knows a specific martial art.
There is a baseball player named Pete Cosma. And they had
the
baseball game that was going on throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, that they're always watching. That's like one of the things they're doing is they're watching one of their... Yeah. You really get a sense of how tight-knit this family is because even during this crisis, they're watching one of their family members play baseball.
Yeah, one of the sons is on the baseball team, and so they're hoping that they're going to win this championship. That's probably not by mistake then to name it after Cosma because they are like such big baseball fans. But also it was cool because... apparently that kid who was the main player behind King Cosma learned, what was it, Shaolin Kung Fu from their grandfather?
Oh, no, that was Tai Chi.
Was it? They said something.
Well, what he was practicing in the garden
looked like Tai Chi.
Multiple scenes was... I'm sure he taught him Tai Chi, but I don't remember what the movement style he used to fight was, actually. But I imagine Shaolin sounds about right.
One of the aunts says it. When they're asking about the kid and how did they end up learning that kind of stuff, but it's really brief. It's like a throwaway line. So I was like, oh, they really should have mentioned that more. But they are like the top fighter, like in Oz, and so when they show up to fight this
Love
AI,
Machine,
that's right,
Love Machine. When they show up to fight, the AI is called Love Machine.
That's funny.
And basically, it plows what the little distorted version of Kenji's avatar in the face, and then the avatar starts eating other accounts, and then becomes the Hindu-looking god that we were just discussing. And then that's when shit gets real. At that point.
Oh yeah, starts messing up everyone's GPSs to start.
I don't know. I felt like the only reason it decided to do something was because it got challenged, but maybe that was just me. I felt like it was kind of hanging out in there at first and not really doing anything, but then as soon as it got challenged and beat that person, it then started to collect information and then start fucking with their systems.
Well, yeah, one dude explained that was its whole program basically was to be a learning machine,
right?
To constantly be collecting data, and what's the best way to learn but to be challenged by something and to overcome it? That's essentially what learning is.
So I wonder then if it was sort of a weird chain reaction that sort of set that off, where it was learning, oh well, if I want to be the one in charge, I got to be the best at everything, and then it started collecting information that way,
right?
And or taking apart their infrastructure and seeing how it all worked, I guess.
I feel like in a way it was sort of like an experiment to him.
Right.
Let me learn what happens if I mess with the systems. How will the humans react to this?
Well, they do mention later on that the AI program was not being vindictive or anything. It wasn't doing it because it hated humans or because it was trying to get a certain result. It's just because it was part of its programming.
Yeah.
Eventually, I think this is a little earlier on in the film, you're introduced to the uncle that shows up, and he went to MIT.
Yeah, he went to the version of MIT in Japan, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And so you find out that he is actually the one who made the artificial intelligence.
Yes. I don't think he made it until he went to the US though.
Yeah, he ended up. Well, what he did was he sold a piece of property that belonged to the grandmother, took the money from that, and then went to the United States, where that money funded his research into making the artificial intelligence.
And this basically makes him an outcast to the family.
Yeah.
None of them are a fan of him.
He was gone for 10 years.
Yeah, except for Natsuki. Natsuki's the only one that seems to be even remotely fond of him.
They sort of got at the idea that she may have been like having a crush on him, but it wasn't like fully fleshed out because it's like somewhat of like they're family members basically, even though they're not like blood related because he ended up being adopted. Mm-hmm. So that was the thing, and then that was sort of the fake story that she gave to Kenji when they came in, like his basically what that guy was all about. She gave that story over to Kenji, and then they were like, oh, and they figure it out later in the film.
Embarrassing.
Yeah, they embarrassed the hell out of her.
Oh, yeah. They roasted her. It was funny too because in that scene you see him walking in the background and he like pauses to eavesdrop, and honestly same
Yeah, that's a good moment where he wants to know what's happening, and it's pretty funny.
So you find out that he made it. It starts to crumble all of the systems, taking everybody's accounts because it defeats King Cosma once it transforms.
Yeah.
And like beats him out of that, and then Kenji's little squirrel avatar runs away with it to help him escape and not be taken by it, essentially.
Well, what it starts doing is, one, sending random alerts for senior citizens who have like a life alert button, basically. So it starts sending some of those. Their GPS goes down, so everyone is stuck in traffic because they don't know where they're going. And then, which is kind of funny. Yeah. And then there's also... the water system is getting over flooded in some areas, and those are like the main things that are like happening, and it sort of causes this huge commotion where no one can go anywhere because they just can't seem to navigate without it, which is a great like comment on just how well connected people are to things. Like I use GPS for like everything, like whenever I'm driving around anywhere.
I know, even when you go places that you know how to get to.
Well, I gotta say that I use it for the most part because of the timing. So I want to know like how long it's going to take me to get somewhere.
Fair.
Especially in the morning when I travel to work. But for the most part here in San Diego, I don't know where anything is. So I like always have to use GPS to get places.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So it's
not to say I couldn't read a map if I had to, because my dad showed me how to do that.
A map?
Yeah, like the city maps that you can get at like the gas station.
Yes, I know what a map is.
I'm not saying you don't know what a map is. I'm telling you specifically which maps. It's like, yeah, you know this thing that they used to print out? It's like when you used to print out MapQuest directions.
Oh, God. I remember being that GPS so many times.
Sitting in the fucking passenger seat. Yeah. Your fucking parents are like reprimanding you because you didn't tell them fast enough.
Right. And then you take a wrong turn, and then you got to get out the map and figure out where the street you're trying to get to is.
I got lucky. My dad always knew where he was going, so we hardly ever used anything like that. And then if he did, he usually gave it to me in the back seat, which was awful because I didn't know where I was going either. So I was like, I think it's right here. He's like, is it right here? I was like, I think. And he was like, oh, it would just freak out every time. Well, I mostly wanted to play my Game Boy is why. So I was like, why are you giving me a map?
Gosh, Dad.
Yeah. Let me play Pokemon right now,
yeah,
man.
Pretty much. Yeah,
trying to level my Charizard.
Yep. I still have that Game Boy. Now I think about it.
Hell yeah.
But I digress. The only reason I mention it is because they have so many electronics in here that are reminiscent of like a DS. I don't even know if the DS was out at that point, at 2009, but it was definitely shown in there. Like it looked like the first DS that had come out. And then they also had those flip phones that were also like smartphones.
Yeah.
They were really good, but they were also just a flip phone.
Yeah,
so I didn't know how to feel about it.
That DS came out in 2004.
Okay. So yeah, it had been out for a couple of years. I don't know why I didn't think it was out yet.
I believe at around this point, after King Cosmo's beaten, that's when the uncle reveals that he created Love Machine.
Yeah.
And he says that he did it to make all of this money for the family so they could return back to their former status.
Yeah.
And that's when he tells that to the grandma. The grandma pulls a naginata on him.
Oh my God.
And nearly kills him.
Yeah, and nearly kills him with it.
I love that scene so much. Like, I honestly did not know what she was going to do. Like, there was so much expression she showed in that moment. I was like, is she going to hug him? Is she going to slap him?
I thought she was going to shoot him with a bow and arrow is what I thought.
Oh, man. She just straight up goes for it. What was it called?
That's a naginata.
Naginata.
Yeah.
Although it is dull, but it's still something that she knows how to use.
Well,
like,
she
did not like...
enough. Just saying.
Yeah, she was very confident using it and like knew how to use all of the forms and stuff, but it was very dull, and she's not that strong because she's 90.
Yeah, but you do find out that this family has like a warrior past sort of deal, that they had like groups of samurais in their midst and whatnot, and they fought against, I can't remember the names of who they did, but it was some empire, and they stood against them basically, so they have a lot of pride in like that part of their family.
Right. Like I think they said their family stretched back like 16 generations, or at least in that house specifically that they're at.
It's why they're so well connected.
Right.
And even the grandmother at some point, when the whole Oz system goes down, just makes several calls. And
several hundred.
Yeah.
You don't even really, like, you're not fully sure what she's doing. Like, she's just making a whole bunch of calls in this, and then it shows the symbol on her back.
Yeah.
Which is the little bird, which I imagine is the sigil of the family.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, she's got family in like every part of like their industry. So it's like everyone who is like a paramedic, doctors, people who worked in certain businesses,
even some government officials.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she talked to like the police chief at some point, or the commissioner, and she was like, I didn't even know like she knew that guy. So she just called up all these people to get basically to like inspire them, give them some hope, and then like kind of come together. And she was very upset when people were not doing anything. She was like, well, get off your ass and do something.
Yeah, exactly.
Way to go, Granny.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very cool.
Right.
They don't really ever explain what happened to, I think it was their great-grandfather at some point, but I don't know if she was ever married? Or did they say what happened?
I mean, she must have had some sort of relations to make any of the children, of course, but yeah, they don't really go into that at all, because I feel like they're trying to keep the pace of the film going.
I think they had mentioned something in the beginning about him going and spending all of their money.
Oh, that's right. I think she kicked him out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think she just exiled him from the family.
You guys are definitely right, because there is a moment where they do mention that Grandpa like took off with like everything and like basically like wasted it all.
Yep.
Essentially. So
because they're a very wealthy family at some point. I mean, to have a house like they did.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of houses apparently like that nobody is living in parts of Japan, because they're like old and sort of run down.
Yeah.
And like you can buy them really cheap if you wanted to just go live in the country.
Yeah, good fixer-up.
And it would be very much like what you saw in this film.
Hit up your Japanese real estate.
And brush up on your Duolingo.
Yeah. I mean, once she starts calling in favors, you notice that love machine, basically that symbol flashes inside of Oz.
Yeah.
Like it shows it, so you can tell that she's going to become a target.
Right,
next.
And I think that's what he did, is that he targeted the monitor that, I think it was the uncle or one of her sons had, to basically check if her vitals
I hadn't
were okay.
previously thought that was exactly what he was doing. That the reason why he was targeting all of those monitors for the senior citizens was to find hers.
Right.
And the off chance that something might happen to her, and then you would actually kill her in the real world, which is like, that's way darker than I originally thought.
Yeah. But again, it also shows the weight that technology has.
Right.
It's literally somebody's life is in the palm of your hands.
Yeah.
With your devices.
I mean, while I do see that technology is definitely really well integrated into what we're doing now in our society, I don't feel like in some places it would be as dramatic.
Oh, definitely not.
Definitely here in the United States, though, because we've decided to connect it to everything from our banking to like our own profiles, as well as like in hospitals. Like they run on a lot of technology that gives alerts and things like that. So it's like I could see that really affecting a large like metropolitan area, but not so much in other places. So it's interesting to see that.
So from here on, she gets targeted.
Yeah.
The doctor does not get a call that her vitals are off, essentially, and she ends up dying.
Well, not before Kenji plays one final game with her, like the night before.
Plays koi koi with her.
Which I didn't fully understand.
Yeah.
And I had to like actually look it up to see what this game was. And so all I could find is that it's a popular card game in Japan played with Hanafuda cards. And so the phrase koi koi means come on in Japanese, which is said when the player wants to continue the hand.
I like that. Koi koi.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using that with people.
The main gist of it is that you accumulate points based on the cards that are there, and they're all worth different values. And then at the end of the hand, you can choose to keep those points or to wager them again in a new match. So it's possible you can lose all of your points or just keep some and only wager a few points. In the case of the film, she wagers like all of the accounts at some point.
Right, because she has to win back a few million in a matter
of...
Natsuki
like, has to.
Yeah. It shows up later, and it's interesting that the artificial intelligence can't help itself, where it's like, yeah, I'll play this game, and is taking on that bet of losing like everything, because it really has no concept of that. It just wants to overcome whatever challenge it's presented with. Because I feel like if you just wagered that against a regular villain who was a human, they'd be like, I'm not going to play your game. Like, I would never wager what I've got here.
But it's like King Cosmo's player says, like, it likes to play games, I can tell, sort of deal. So they use that against it, basically. The fact that it likes to play games, it likes to fight, it likes to,
gamble.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is essentially how they ended up beating it. Is the good gamble.
Well, the grandma wins against Kenji, and then basically forces him to promise to take care of her granddaughter. And he's kind of timid with her in that moment. It's just like, I don't really think that's like something I can do, but like, I'll try. And it's interesting because they spend a lot of time showing her not liking like average or like weaker men. But in this moment, she really likes him and is like, you got to promise me like if I win. And she does win. And it also shows that their family's pretty good at this game.
Yeah.
Like I guess her other grandson, so her uncle and her are both really good, or all three of them are really good at that game, and it becomes relevant later in the movie. So that was interesting, but it was such a like easy-ish card game to like kind of figure out once like you went and read what it is, because we were watching it and I didn't know what the heck it was. I'd never heard of this game before. But I imagined it was something similar to like poker, sort of, where you gamble.
With like more of a points-based system, maybe something like Rummy Cube almost, maybe.
Which one?
Like Rummy Cube?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
How do they? I think I've only played that like once.
Yeah, a couple times for
me. But then we find out that overnight something happens. I'm guessing maybe a heart attack, weak heart, something like that. They mentioned exactly what it is. Do you remember?
It was, I think it was, I hope I'm not pronouncing this wrong, but angina, something
like that's that. Right. The doctor does say it.
Yeah.
And he explains that he had a monitor on her, but because of the audio system being down, he wasn't able to notice that. And so she passes, I guess, in her sleep. She doesn't look like she died really painfully. Yeah. And she they realize this, and the whole family is there to kind of figure out that she's died at like 5 a.m, really super early. And it's actually really sad. Like, this is a really sad part of the film when you're watching it.
Oh yeah.
Especially considering the fight that she had with her adopted son the night before.
Right.
Where she basically like threatened to kill this guy.
Yeah, it definitely it's one of the more heart-wrenching scenes as well, especially because you have the scene where Kenji, Natsuki and Kenji are sitting, and she just starts crying, like just like bawling like really hard, and it's this really, like, the music in the background, it sets a really good scene for this like emotion, and you just feel so bad for them and whatnot. And they made the grandma so likable. Yeah,
they really did. Yeah, they spent a lot of time making sure that you cared a lot about this character, and then pretty much killing them is kind of set off the rest of the family to figure out what's going on. So it's funny because they split the family along gender lines. So all of the men were very focused in on getting into the game to get their revenge back or to avenge the grandmother, whereas all of the women in the family were focused on just getting funeral arrangements going for it. And then the random girl who was watching the baseball game the whole time.
Yeah. Love her.
Yeah, she was just sitting in front of the TV the whole time.
She gave no fucks.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
She was like, what? The world's ending. Are you sure?
Right, yeah. She really was like, oh, but like this is happening, or somebody comes by and she's like, is it lunchtime? She's like, how did you guess? And it's funny because that was the only time that they were paying attention. But it was such a good analogy for what usually happens when there's big events happening, is that we're easily distracted. It's like, it's probably no mistake that our current impeachment trial is running right next to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's like
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
See, I don't give a fuck about sports.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. I don't really care much for sports either. So like, I'm not really noticing that the Super Bowl's around, but the people are definitely focused in on the Super Bowl and not really watching the impeachment trial. So it was like, this sort of happens a lot where there's these main sporting events that happen and people pay attention more to that than like a global crisis, because that game kept going. Like they probably got notified at some point and they just kept going
despite this like crazy threat they have, and you just gotta complete the game, gotta get the title.
Well, I get, like at first it seems like the only threat they're gonna have is to their information, and that they're just gonna lose this. They're not gonna have control over their systems. But then all of a sudden, it's like it like straight up threatens them with like, I'm gonna drop this on a nuclear site and set off like a really big catastrophic event that's gonna change like your whole world. And then that's when the movie is like, oh shit, like we really need to do something about this, and kind of sets in the new pacing for the movie, which really speeds up.
Oh yeah, those last few minutes of the movie were really stressful.
Yeah. I mean, after the grandma passes away, a whole bunch of people start showing up to the house. Like the military shows up, the police force shows up, and they all show up with like servers and like
a humongous computer.
Yeah, a big supercomputer essentially.
A boat.
Yeah, and a boat.
That was the funniest thing. He just drops it in one of the lakes like on the property, and that's like their main power source.
That was I mean, I guess, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that was like grandma's goodbye gift basically, was here's all of these tools for you to use.
Right.
For this event that's going on. Yeah,
it seems that the family members who brought them were really well connected. So they're like, yeah, we're going to bring this satellite or this connector that'll bring that connection you need for it. Because they were like sort of in the mountains. So they didn't really have a good like power source. They didn't really have any sort of like a satellite, or not a satellite, an antenna to reach out.
Plus, they had to have equipment powerful enough to hack into pretty much like the entire internet and control it, because they used pretty much the entire database of Oz to shut this thing in, or at least try to, until it overheated.
Oh my God, I was so annoyed for that.
Yeah, exactly right.
So the computer obviously gets really hot, because that's what computers do, and so they brought in these giant pieces of ice from the boat.
Yeah.
And locked it in a room of this computer to keep it cool. But, they also happen to have a dead body in the other room. And it's the hottest day of summer. And, you know what happens when rotting flesh and heat, not a good smell. So one of the dudes decided to take the ice and put it around the grandmother to keep her cool, which in turn caused the computer to, malfunction, and the AI to break out of its little box that they put it in.
He's also like one of the goofiest members of the family.
Oh my God, he's hilarious.
He's a cop.
Yeah, he's also
a cop.
He is also a cop. He does try arresting Kenji at some point, but then realizes he can't go anywhere because the GPS is down and there's traffic, so they just end up going back. But then that's when he finds out that he wasn't the one who broke into the system. It was just one of many people, and he didn't break into it because he got one letter wrong at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so he was like, oh, but then he figures out the code the second time to get into it. And so that,
and the third time and the fourth time.
He does it 5 times, I guess. But like, I got to be honest, I don't know what he was doing. Like, was he just rearranging like the code to figure out how to get in?
Yeah,
or, like...
he basically, like, it was a really strong code that the admins put on it so that nobody could break in, and they made it so complex that it would take like a mathematician to figure it out. And our boy Kenji here is
Kenji?
Yeah, exactly, is a math nut for sure, and he figures it's a code to solve. So he loves doing those things, right. So he just does it because that's just what he does. And ends up like actually not breaking in, getting framed for it.
Right. I think what I liked too was at this moment when they start bringing in all the equipment and start working together, the movie wouldn't have gotten to its conclusion without all of them. So like every single person who's like involved with that is actually really important. And there was like, they probably wouldn't have been able to do it without one of those main characters, like without King Cosmo, without Kenji, without Natsuki, and then all of the other family members who join in to fight as well.
Right.
So they really push this idea that when there's that crisis, everyone's sort of going to come together to really help their situation. And like they do it again at the end when people start like giving their avatars or profiles to Natsuki so she can wager against the AI.
I mean, that whole the Koi Koi game that she plays against Love Machine is super tense like, the whole time. She's just, all right, I've only got like 75 accounts to bet, and that's all the family members like make accounts if they don't have them, and they set them up there ready to be bet. And she starts betting. She starts winning at first.
Yeah.
She wins a few hands, and then she loses all of it, and she doesn't have enough to continue. and then it's like one little tiny white avatar shows up.
Yeah, it's a little German
boy
kid.
from
Yeah,
Germany.
yeah,
Guten Tag.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like says like, here, take my account, and then all the people from around the world show up, like millions of them.
It's honestly crazy how many times I've seen that happen in movies where
Yeah.
like all hope is lost and all of a
Totally.
sudden everybody just shows up and is like, hey, we're here to save the day, which is awesome because, you know, that's kind of how it works.
I
The
mean, it
strength in
always works
numbers.
like that. I know
Yeah.
I've mentioned it a lot before, but it followed very closely to the hero's journey shit.
Mhm.
And like, this is that moment where it's very dark. The hero looks like they might lose, and then something pushes that hope over the edge, and then it's like a flood of all of the support they get to overcome that challenge.
I feel like this movie did it really well, though.
Yeah.
Really well to where you actually feel everything is going to fail right now.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I was honestly not sure. Like,
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I
was
wasn't sure after the grandma
second-guessing.
died,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Right. This movie had me second guessing myself so much. And I always feel like when I watch movies, I have it all figured out, you know, but this one, I really
Yeah.
didn't know what to expect.
I felt the same way. I
Yeah.
usually can predict a lot of the movies, and this one was really good at also making you feel the emotions of the characters as well. It had such a specific mood and tone when they were going through all of it, and like even though we watched a dubbed version of it, it was still really well done.
Oh yeah,
I think
the
it-
voice actors were amazing.
I think it was an official one. I think it was like a version they include in addition to the original Japanese voicing that they did. They had a team do it in English, and I think that's what we ended up watching, and it was still really well done.
Yeah, definitely.
It didn't seem cheesy like when you watch an anime and you're like, this is so bad, this is so badly dubbed.
Yeah. It didn't feel that way at all. I would agree the voice acting was really good for the dub, which I saw originally the like non-dubbed version.
Nice.
Which was also really good and did a really good job. And then I watched it dubbed as well, and I was like, wow, this is still like really watchable.
Right. Yeah. It was still very watchable. And it ended up being very positive. Like, this wasn't an event where like a whole bunch of people fucking died, or like they all sort of lose and then it just ends like that.
In a sense, they kind of gained a lot from the experience
Yeah.
because, you know, well, in the end, the dude had to reroute, what was it, some sort of spaceship?
Yeah, so in the final ditch effort, the AI decides that it's going to drop the satellite on their house, on the people who challenged him, instead of on a nuclear site. And so they then have to try to redirect it. And they do this by breaking into it. And that's when Kenji does it like 4 times over to break through the password in there.
Stressful.
And then Rabbit Boy comes in and
Yeah.
kicks the AI's ass for a
Yeah,
minute.
exactly.
Ooh.
Once they get it open, that's when and he does it like the AI reset, like blocks them out like 4 times, and Kenji's just sitting there rapidly like drawing numbers and like doing math as
It's
fast
that
as he
little
possibly
scribbly
can.
sound that you hear as he's
Yeah.
writing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a very, a Dragon Ball Z moment. It shows up and like just the hugest punch
Oh my
you could possibly
God.
have, and it just shatters
That was
the AI.
epic.
And it was very cool. Yeah, I liked the design on the rabbit character for King Cosmo as well. He looked like something that was like meant to be like drawn after like an American style cartoon.
It's interesting because the baseball player, Pete Cosma, his uniform is actually red, which was the colors of the rabbit, red and white.
Oh, it has to be him.
Shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
He just looks up to
Where
his
is
brother.
he from? Does it say?
He is an American baseball player, Atlanta Braves, played in Major League Baseball, St. Louis Cardinals, New York Yankees, Texas Rangers, and the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah. It was totally a character that was made after a famous American baseball player, and it ended up looking like that. So that's cool. That
Yeah.
they ended up doing something like that.
Good read, Justine.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have never noticed
What
that.
can I say?
And I was like, I bet that had to be connected in some way. And I'm sure some of the other names are too,
Yeah.
just for some of the characters that they used.
Mhm.
But I really like that every time we see a fisherman in the family, it's always related to squid. They always like to do the fried squid or the whatever. Like,
Squid.
I saw it in like a bunch of other anime. They always show them like really excited, and they always have that like rope tied around their head, around their forehead, the white rope, and they're always wearing shorts.
They're always very tan.
You're very tan.
They're
I-
seamen.
one of the things is like it stresses is sort of like family unity
Totally.
as well, which is something that grandma says at a certain point when she basically says, don't forget to have a meal with each other, you know, like love your family, get together sort of deal.
Right. And they did have that big meal right before they were about to go take down the AI.
Yeah, they had like they're 2 hours left, and they really did stop to eat, and they were eating like very quickly.
Right. But one thing I really liked is that I feel like, in a sense, the family regained the wealth that they had lost from their grandfather, because once they rerouted that spaceship, it struck the side of the mountain and happened to hit a hot spring, a big patch of water under the ground. So, they can make a lot of money off of having a hot spring on their property.
I think that's what they were getting at.
They pretty much like struck gold, like quite literally. The way it came up out of the ground, the way they cheered is, I imagine how it is when you strike oil.
Yep.
Or gold or something like that.
Oh yeah, it's also sort of a prestige thing to be able to like run a hot springs kind of I don't know what to call it. It's like not really a bathhouse.
Onsen.
There you go. That's it. And so to have one of those, you kind of end up having it in your family, and then people run it, and you're able to get some money off of that. If you don't get any money from the contract that guy made with the U.S. government. I don't know if they're going to be good on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, earlier on he says, look, the USSR offered to buy it. Look, Grandma.
Look, Grandma.
Yeah, so it was like, that was funny because they put aside the fact that like the U.S. government was like, yeah, we'll just fucking throw it in there and test it. And they're like, oh shit, we didn't expect it to do this. And then of course they were like, it wasn't our fault. We didn't do this. Which is very typical government response.
It was this guy. He programmed the thing, so obviously it's his fault. Even though he didn't, do anything with it. He just sold it to us, and we did the rest. But whatever. That's not the point.
Yeah, no, it was definitely doing that. They had a very good piece of social commentary on how government agencies will usually handle situations like this, and then how the community will sort of handle that too. So it was very positive. It doesn't surprise me that a movie made in Japan is going to be all about family. And how you have to, like, even the grandma says at one point that you can't abandon family no matter how much how badly they may treat you in some moments. And so in her final letter, she mentions that she wants that son to come back because he hadn't been there for 10 years. But this was obviously written before he shows up.
The son who programmed the AI.
Yeah, the son who programmed the AI. And so she doesn't even want like an elaborate funeral. She's just like, just something small, like close family, and then you guys need to get back to your lives. Like, don't waste too much time. So she was just like an all-around really, really good matriarch for the family. Mm-hmm. Even like after dying, her final letter is still really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And she went out in a blaze of glory.
Sort of.
Brandishing blades at people.
Yep.
I'm glad it wasn't like a crazy violent scene or like a very traumatic. She just passes in her sleep. And that felt better to me for the character than anything else. But it was still tragic because it's like, oh man, like I thought she was gonna live on through the whole movie, but there's always that one person that sort of has to die. And it doesn't surprise me that it's an older person in the family, because it's just like other stories where the older matriarch will die. It reminded me of Moana. The grandmother passes in that movie, and it's like really fucking sad, but it sets off a lot of stuff.
It's cool though, because you can see how her legacy made such a big effort, like all of the connections, all the lives that she had met, even like some of the relationships that weren't so great, she still managed to like go back and look upon all of those and bring them into action when it was needed most, when the world needed it, and it's really cool that they it was like she was giving herself her own like testimony in a sense.
Oh yeah, she gave her own eulogy.
Yeah.
Well, at least to them, not to like everybody, because the mom read it out loud to everybody. Although it did go into her voice, so that we heard it in the grandma's voice. Well, like not even
that, but like her effort. Like
gotcha.
Contacting everybody was in a sense like a greater showing of who she was as a person.
Oh yeah, totally.
All of the people she'd met,
What other larger ideas do you think the film dealt with in addition to what we've mentioned?
I guess you could reframe it as sort of like a, be cautious with technology and how much weight you press upon it, which we've covered a lot so far. But I feel like that's like one of the big outstanding messages that they focus on a lot, and they just analyze that point.
I feel what I got from the movie is the importance of the individual amongst the collectivist society. Because, in the end, when the AI had collected all of those profiles, they were all individual profiles. And, just one profile isn't going to make too much of a difference. But altogether, it made a huge difference. But also on the flip side, all of those people joined together to fight, the greater good. And it worked out, And it really just took one person to kind of inspire everything else to go along with it. So cause and effect. It's like a chain reaction, you know. It just takes a spark to set off the explosion.
It's usually how it goes with storytelling that involves like people trying to get hope in a very dire situation. But in a different way, it was kind of my only critique of the movie was that it was, to me, a little bit overtly like very positive. Whereas like I don't feel people would come together like that. But I think that's just because of what situation we're living in currently in the United States. Not so much outside of the United States, because the French are doing what the fuck they need to do to get their shit going.
Viva la revolution!
They're like pulling out a guillotine like every other week to be like, we need to get something settled.
Oh, shit.
I mean, there's like videos now of like the firefighters fighting against police in France right now.
Yeah,
too.
Love it.
That's crazy. They like lit themselves on fire and started attacking police officers.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, like what the fuck?
Literal firefighters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is crazy to hear about. So yeah, so I think maybe it's me being just a little bit more cynical about what's going on because we are not in a good moment in the United States as it stands currently.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable, but I feel like this movie is sort of like a call to shift your perspective, you know?
Right.
Because as long as you stay in the mindset of nothing's going to get better, I mean, nothing will get better. You're not giving it the fuel to really manifest.
I got really strong Star Trek vibes off of it, where it's just like that, because that's usually what happens in most Star Trek things is that like through their unity they ended up working much better and overcome whatever's going on. With like the main thing they do is like Starfleet is like the main thing that everyone joins together to fight against whatever. In most cases it's the Klingon, but I'm sure there's other villains that show up throughout the series. Is there any other moments you wanted to mention that like stood out to you, or that you have any final thoughts about the film itself? Because it is sort of like a standalone thing. There's not really going to be anything else for it.
Just go watch it. It's very entertaining, and you'll get some good feels. You'll get some sad feels. It's well rounded.
Yeah, it's really like a movie that has a lot of emotional ties to it. You'll feel so much watching this movie. All of the different types of feels.
Oh yeah, I almost cried multiple times.
Ditto.
Yeah.
I've cried enough today. I was trying my best not to.
It's just because they did a really good job of getting the emotions across to the audience, and that's one of the better things I think that you like. If you watch anime already, you kind of get that gist, where it's like they usually do a really good job of making you feel something. It's like I don't know if you guys have seen it. Have you seen the My Hero Academia shit?
No.
Like every other episode, I just want to cry because it's like it's super inspiring.
Weep.
Yeah. Oh man, totally. We just got Hulu, so we're about to watch like so much shit on there.
You got access to my Hulu.
That's what I'm saying. We got Hulu. Like, what do you mean? But you know, that's always been a strong part of that kind of storytelling. And it works out really well because you end up really feeling for these characters and you enjoy the storytelling that way. And so it works out better in some ways, I think, than what you would get here in the United States with some of the films. Especially because they don't really... I feel like in the United States, we don't take animation all that serious. It's usually like for kids, with the exception of like a few people, kind of like Tartakovsky, who made like Samurai Jack. And that new show I think he made, was it Brutal?
Mm-hmm. It's not called... It's Primal.
It's called Primal.
I still need to watch that.
I need to watch it as well.
Yeah.
And other than that, like we really don't have like that sort of storytelling in an animated form like you do outside of the United States. So it's cool to see a film like this, and it's a feature length film. Like it's 2 hours basically.
I mean, even Miyazaki himself has like made a lot of critiques on anime. And a lot of the tropes that follow with that, which is why a lot of anime comes off as super cheesy or something along those lines, or not as serious. And like one of his big critiques, which I've probably said this before, but I'll say it again. And he basically said that a lot of people that make anime don't interact with people normally, so they don't know how to write people.
That's
like,
fair.
Make actual characters.
Right. They're all these larger than life fantasy characters, super blown up egos, super blown up skills.
Yeah, and when in reality people aren't all like that, and so this movie did a very good job of making like believable human characters.
Yeah, that was definitely something I liked, even in the way that the characters were drawn. They looked very real. Like they weren't wearing these cool, interesting, intricate outfits.
Very
they were literally
normal clothes.
Wearing like you know, your standard T-shirts.
He had a Datsun T-shirt, which is great.
A couple American brands.
Yeah, definitely the American brand.
Some sports jerseys. I'm pretty sure the one aunt that was watching the baseball game was wearing like a baseball jersey the whole time.
She was. But that's true. There was a lot of attention to detail as far as like these are just everyday people, and it also wanted to, I think, explain their sort of situation as far as their finances go. They weren't like the richest family anymore, but they definitely had some prestige because of how well connected they are and how old the family is, and so they were able to show that through what you were looking at as far as their clothes goes. But they all had like business jobs. They were like the working class, basically. I don't think anyone there had like a really high-end job. They were like working in the water plant. They were working as paramedics. They were like working in certain areas of government. So I think one of the guys worked for like Secret Service, I guess. And he like couldn't tell anybody what his job was.
Right. Some sort of military technology, intelligence. I don't know. He did a lot, apparently.
Yeah.
Because he got access to all this equipment somehow.
Yeah. Very good. Definitely go watch it. And then to me, I feel like this has a lot of rewatchability, so I would go back and watch it again, especially because it's really inspiring. So it's definitely something that you'll enjoy if you've enjoyed other animated films. So I would say I recommend it. Definitely go watch it.
Absolutely. Absolutely recommend it.
It's a yes from me.
Yeah, I think we've gotten pretty much to the end there of all of it, and I think that was like kind of all of our final thoughts. You guys got anything else?
No.
All right.
Nah.
You started. You were like, oh. All right, then before I let everybody go, I just want to remind everyone we're super easy to find. We're on all the streaming services, so we're on Apple Podcasts, as well as Spotify, iHeartRadio, and SoundCloud. We are also on Stitcher and CastBox. You can find all of our social medias on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's under BDTGH_podcast. And on the Instagram, we actually have a link to our website where you can listen to the episodes on the site. So if you don't want to go to any of the other streaming sites, you can actually listen straight from that website. And if you could, please leave us a review on the Apple Podcast. Helps us get our ratings up, and we're able to be seen more easily on the website. So thanks, guys, for coming out to talk with me about this. I hope everyone has a good night.
I'm Mitch.
I'm Justine.
And I'm Jonathan. Thank you.